school, a Title I school in Warner Robins. For those of you on the call, if you would like to ask Councilman Dickens a question, please type it in the chat box. And Chris Cannon, the Associate Director at GCEE, will select a few of the questions to be asked toward the end of the webinar. So with that, I'd like to start with the first question for Councilman Dickens. Councilman Dickens, can you please explain your role as an at-large Atlanta City Council member? Who do you represent and what are your main focus areas?
Well, good, thank you. So as an at-large City Council member, I am a representative of the entire city of Atlanta. So Atlanta is broken up into 12 districts. And so there are district council members and they represent maybe about 35, 40,000 people each. But then you have at-larges. There's 3 of us that are at-large representatives and we are citywide. So we're elected by the same amount of people that elect the mayor. And we have to go everywhere from north, south, east, west, all across the city. And so I've been doing that for 7 years now. I'm in my second term, my terms of 4 years. So the other thing about it is, so district reps are kind of like how the House of Representatives work. You're elected by the people that live near you. And at-large reps are kind of like senators, so to speak. We're elected by a larger body. And therefore, the good news for us having that diversity of thinking is if district people just thought like districts, then they'll just protect their local interests. Whereas at-large folks, we tend to say, well, I've seen how great this was done in your side of town. I've seen sidewalks get put in over here, so now I know how to make sure that happens over there. Or I've seen disparate treatment or lack of things that happen over here, here, and here, and I want to make that change. I want to make sure that it's fair. So best practices and those things are what at-large members bring to the table, and we get lobbied a lot. The challenge is we have to go a lot of places every night. We're all here, there, everywhere. Anybody can call us, but they tend to not call us about the leaky, water main or a fire hydrant or a stop sign as much because they have the district reps. And the last thing I'll say about that is we have also, I'm a committee chairman. I don't know if you're gonna get to that, but I'm the transportation committee chairman, which means I have oversight over the world's busiest airport, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Have oversight over all our roads, bridges, pathways, etc. So that's a committee of 7 members, and I'm the chairman and been that way for 3 years. Before that, I was chair of community development, which has a lot of things related to health and human services, people, parks, planning, and trees, and all the community related things in neighborhood meetings.
All right.
Good morning, I'm Curtis Singleton, EIP teacher at Russell Elementary. And you mentioned education as one of your main focus areas, and you're a product of the Atlanta Educational Pipeline. You've also established a joint commission with the City Council and the Atlantic Public School Board. What is the role of the City Council in ensuring the absolute best education for each and every student in Atlanta and the surrounding communities?
Yeah, so I am a product of Atlanta Public Schools. Thank you for mentioning that, Curtis. I went K through 12 in the same school system that I represent, essentially. My daughter as well. And, growing up that way, it gave me a lens into the opportunities that come from a great quality education. I was afforded the best of Atlanta Public Schools education that ended up leading me to be the first in my family to go to a university, and I went to Georgia Tech. And then I went to Georgia State after that. So I kind of got all Georgia, many of Georgia's great institutions. But the city of Atlanta and the school system are 2 separate bodies. So we have a school council, a school board, and we have a city council. We have a school superintendent, we have a mayor. But that doesn't mean that we are all not working on behalf of our youth and their educational outcomes. I know very well that it's hard to teach a hungry child. It is hard to teach a child that has a difficult time walking to school because they live within a half mile of a school, and the school bus service doesn't always, we don't guarantee it for if you're within a half mile, you have to walk to school. although sometimes they get picked up. But I would say it's very difficult for a kid to walk on a street that doesn't have a sidewalk, or that the sidewalk has grass grown all on it or crumbled. It's hard to get to school without a decent crosswalk on some of these streets. It's hard to go to school and be trained with excellence if there's a creepy set of houses that are vacant, or they're bad guys, or presumably, what could be unsavory, appearing individuals outside these houses as kids go to school. So they want to cross the street or what have you. So I can mention a number of environmental things that the city council has to take in mind as we try to provide the best surrounding environmental things for kids to have safe routes to school, to have a quality home life, to be able to have affordable housing. The lowest performing schools in our school system, and it may be similar to that in Warner Robins, it may be similar to that across Georgia and other places. The lowest performing schools are the schools that have the highest student mobility. The students that are in transition, meaning you're in public school A at the start of school. By Christmas, you're in public school B. By spring break, you're in public school C. With that many moving parts, meeting that many new students, meeting that many new teachers, taking that many new buses, sometimes those schools are not in the same system. In Atlanta, you may be in Atlanta public schools, but you get evicted from your home because you don't have the ability to pay your rent. You're going to go stay with a neighbor, a family member, and they may be in Clayton County schools. They may be in Douglasville. Now you got a whole nother transfer of paperwork, schoolwork, and all that transition is what a lot of times leads to the lowest performing outcome schools. And that's literally mobility and grading are almost on the same curve in our city, at least. And so what do we do as city council? We try to provide affordable housing opportunities. We try to make sure that there's stable housing opportunities. We try to make sure that we give volunteer lawyers everything they need to fight wrongful evictions or things that will make it difficult for kids. If the house is filled with mold, they're coughing, they're asthmatic. These are challenges that are making kids miss days from school. And last thing I'll say is about the council that you mentioned, the Atlanta Youth Commission. I started that up because I wanted youth to have a voice to city council. Youth talking to adults is a good thing. Them telling us the challenges that they have, them telling us the policies they'd like to see us enact, and them being guided by meaningful adults that help manage them is also a good thing. So that's what I put in place about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's a good way for us to hear from youth, and it's a good way for youth to believe in the power and the processes related to our government.
Thank you.
Oh, and we have a joint commission. I don't know if anybody else has this. We have a joint commission that I started also between our school board and our city council. So across the state, I don't know if you guys have that. I know some governments are over their school system as well, but in Atlanta we have separate. And so our board and our school board and our city council don't have a legislated way to talk. So I created that legislated way to talk, and we talk quarterly. And they tell us, what are y'all gonna do for summer programming? Okay, well, we're gonna have Camp Best Friends. We're gonna have, these things are going on in the summer. Okay, how can we advertise that to the kids to get them signed up in the spring? Okay, what are you gonna do as after school programs? All right, the city has these after school programs and these meal programs during COVID. So we talk together. I'm sorry, Karen, you were about to speak.
No problem. No, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Anderson. I'm the Elementary Social Studies Specialist for Newton County School System. Councilman Dickens, can you share your thoughts on what local, state, or federal legislative efforts do you believe would significantly advance equal opportunity for all Americans?
Wow. This is going to take us to the end of the show.
Roll on.
We've come a long ways, but we have a long ways to go. We have lots of things that can be done and things that we can work on. I would say the things that put fairness, equity, opportunity, and access at the top top of the list of things to work on. If it doesn't provide access and opportunity and equity, what is it for? Who is it serving? And why are we putting efforts behind it? If it's only going to serve individuals that already have opportunities, then and it doesn't serve those that we see are in need of more opportunities, then we're just going to widen the gap. Our problem in our current society is the gap, and the gap is widening. The gap is widening in income immobility. Metro Atlanta is the worst in the nation for income immobility. Now, we're the first in the nation for a lot of great things. Georgia's #1 place to do business for so many years. But at the same time, in Atlanta, you have a lot, and this is Metro Atlanta statistics, you have a lot of people, if you were born in poverty, you have a 4% chance of making it to upper middle class. You only have a 4% chance if you're born in poverty in Atlanta, and that's a Harvard study that is across the nation. You only have a 4% chance of making it out from poverty if you're born, and we have a large amount of people born in poverty, and only 4% will escape based on the current set of systems that we have in place. The systems of government, the systems of education, the systems of economic systems, the systems of justice. These systems are somehow, for some reason, currently not affording 96% of the people in poverty to make it to upper middle class. And so that is a travesty. That means that the systems that we all represent, even if we're doing our very best each day, we have to admit that our very best is still not providing for the lower rung to make it from survival to stability on to success. And so what system changes can we make to allow those stages? You go from survival, where you're just trying to get your basic needs met on Maslow's hierarchy of need, down there in the lowest quadrant, where you're just getting your food, your shelter, you're just getting your basic needs met. There are people who right now in our state, and particularly right now in our metro region, that day to day for them is about survival, just getting food each and every day. So we have to provide them that opportunity, which is where schools come in when they're in school, which is where food banks and food shelters, et cetera, come in. Making sure people have access to a grocery store nearby. We have so many food deserts across Georgia. Healthcare, our health system, just making sure that people have adequate healthcare. So when we have policies that the Medicare and Medicaid and these things that we didn't do with expansion, and now you have people driving over 100 and some, almost 200 miles to get to the closest trauma center, ICU, in rural Georgia. These things make it very difficult for you to move out of survival mode, because one medical bill, you could end up being in bankruptcy or in poverty. And so I say that these systems that we have, wherever we work in these systems, we have to make sure that we provide opportunity and access as the first thing, to make sure there's quality, access, and opportunity. Those are the benchmarks. Anything that tears down housing segregation. If you can tear down the segregation of housing, meaning that your zip code, your zip code shouldn't determine your destiny, right? If you live in this zip code, you got higher insurance rates, you got lower mortality rates, you have higher, prone for, various negative indicators. And so if we have more opportunities for housing to be, integrated, that would mean in housing apartments that they have mixed income, where you have 10 or 20% of those housing units set aside for people that don't make, but $25,000, $30,000, right? So that would be people that are, for our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers, these individuals, these folks that are in our workforce, these service and, lower income individuals, their kids shouldn't, should not be determined, that their outcome should not be determined just by where they live. But we know that is happening. We can pick, it's not the school that's bad. It's generally the environment that the school sets in. The kids don't see much more. They don't have much more of integration and seeing all these career opportunities, as well as to be able to live alongside other folks that have these, decent, great, nice, upward mobile professions. So I think whatever tears down housing segregation, that means talking to realtors about their implicit and unconscious bias and where they send people for housing. Oh, you're you, I send you over to this neighborhood. Oh, you're you, I send you to that neighborhood to look at houses. All of those things, housing tells you where you're gonna go to school, tells you where you're gonna vote, tells you where so many of your, where you're gonna eat almost, what bus route you get. I think if you can look at it that way, anything that tears down, institutionalized, suppression is something that we have to break down. That would be in housing. And then, of course, criminal justice reform are some things we're all keenly aware of and working on now because of all of the most recent events that have occurred. And I'll stop there. If I didn't touch on your favorite topic, just tell me about it, and I have some ideas on it. So if you have something, if I didn't hit if I didn't bowl down your alley, just let me know, and I'll come both strike for you.
Well, I think he responded quite thoroughly on that question. Hey, I'm Angie Battle. I'm the program manager for GCEE, and the reason I asked you to be a speaker for this series that we're doing, and you're the inaugural part of the series. We're going to do a series on civil rights and economics. So, and it impressed me whenever I saw you in another webinar, how much you mentioned the economic of civil rights. And thinking back to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963, it was an economic issue. They were dealing with it. So looking today at the protests that we've been seeing lately, what do you see are the economic issues at the core of the Black Lives Matter movement today?
Yeah, thank you, Angie, for that question, and thank you. I didn't know I was the inaugural. That sounds big. I'm gonna put that on my resume and on the side of my car as I drive around Atlanta.
Inaugural.
I'm the inaugural. That's cool. So yeah, we have had a long fight for civil rights, and a lot of progress has been made. And I'm a beneficiary of that progress. Actually, everybody on this call is a beneficiary of that long, hard fight by people who did not know what the outcome was going to be. I mean, you think about when they first started the Montgomery bus boycott, none of them thought that they were going to be going at it for 381 days. The Montgomery bus boycott sounds like, hey, we're not going to ride the bus today, guys. Okay, all right, I'll figure out something. We're not going to ride the bus tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow gets here. Boss, leader, are we riding the bus today? No, we're not riding the bus today. Imagine doing that, and you thought maybe after day 7, maybe after day 14, you did not, there's nobody that can tell me that they were standing in a meeting at a church where he said, we're not riding those buses, that they thought that it was going to go on 381 days of walking and figuring out, well, Andre's got a station wagon. Maybe he can take 5 people to the downtown so they can go to work today. And Princeton or Mike has a big vehicle. They can take people to the grocery store. They had to figure it out after a while and to continue this because the buses needed to feel the pain economically. They weren't going to feel it for a day. They weren't going to feel it for a week. They weren't going to feel it when, hey, they can make adjustments. All right, well, we'll downsize, we'll decrease the amount of bus routes. Hey, this is saving on gas. We'll have to lay off some drivers. But there's 365 days in a year. So after more than a year, it took all of that tenacity, that stick with it. So now we're in a fight for silver rights. We were in a fight for civil rights. Now it's silver rights. And King had shifted from the things that people thought were hard to get over in the beginning. They thought it was hard to give someone the right to vote. They thought it was hard to make sure that people were created and treated fairly and to tear down segregation. That was very difficult. But eventually, good folks of all kinds said, that's just a human right. That's fair. You got to give that up. After all of the brutality, after the water hoses and the dogs and all the images went across the world, across the nation, good folks in the North and in the West and other places said, y'all got to stop that in the South. And it ended up making a huge difference after these people persevered and fought with their blood, sweat, and tears for years. But then when King shifted to jobs and when he organized, you know, things that were with the garbage workers and the porters and all these people, he started messing up the money. And when you mess with the money, you know, they come kill you sometimes. Because civil rights is what we're facing right now. We want economic inclusion, fairness, opportunity. It was hard enough to say you can vote, and you see how voting matters so much that voter suppression is still real today. If voting didn't matter, they wouldn't try to keep you from voting so bad. So that was important then, but civil rights, economics are so important now because how much money you have determines where you can buy a house, which determines what schools you can go to, which determines the economic outcomes you can have. What your job pays you. If it's different from the person sitting one cubicle over, you know, pay equity for women, pay equity for minorities, opportunities for career development. If you're born in a low income neighborhood, do you have the opportunity to get a technology job? Because does your school even have computers? And are you living in a part of Georgia that is connected to be able to have broadband connectivity? So economics has been such a key focus of mine because I know that transitioned my whole life. When I went from low income to going to Georgia Tech and started having opportunities in my internships where I was making more than my mom on a monthly basis in my income in my internships. I was like 19. I saw, wow, there is a big difference between what you can get paid in your first year versus what you can get paid at that time in like her 25th year at the phone company, Bell South. So that bridged the gap for me. Money, job, inclusion, said I can do what I want to do now. I can go on vacation, I can start a business. I've done all these things because I was afforded the inclusion. And when you see the Black Lives Movement going on, and you see all these individuals out here across the nation protesting, we're protesting and it's systems that are being under you know, the challenge right now. And it's the economic system is a big one. How do we communicate financial literacy? How do we communicate thinking? How do we communicate? Here are all the job opportunities that are out there. This is technology, nursing, logistics in Georgia. This is where the money still is. If you're in an obsolete career, we have to train you up in skills that you can shift. In my day job, I work for a nonprofit called Tech Bridge. I'm the vice president there. And that nonprofit is a nonprofit that helps fight generational poverty by creating solutions for technology, training people on technology, and also training people and helping nonprofits serve more people by providing them technology. So we're the backbone behind Big Brothers Big Sisters, Feeding America, Boys and Girls Club, et cetera. But now I created, 2 years ago, I created a technology career program that takes people that are unemployed, underemployed, low income, and I teach them how to do ServiceNow, Salesforce, Microsoft Office, these things that you can learn in a boot camp. I train them for free. I mean, I don't personally train them. I have trainers that train them. We set up all these systems for them to get in 4 months. They go from being unemployed to where their average salary is $56,000. Some of them have made $70,000, $80,000 at companies like Accenture, Coca-Cola, NCR, Google, Anthem, Wellstar. These folks are getting hired after 4 months. They were flipping burgers or folding t-shirts at the Gap or driving a forklift. 4 months later, they're now working as an analyst. They're now working as a junior Salesforce.com developer or architect. And I share that because it's important to know that we aren't that special, those of us that have these fantastic jobs. We just have these great opportunities. And if people are not even aware that there's opportunities in IT or in nursing or in logistics, that's a robbery that the system has just committed on them. It robbed them of an opportunity. And so now if we say, hey, in this part-time program at night, you can go work or drive Lyft or Uber by day, and at night you're gonna come through and get this training so that you can get a great job that, by the way, the companies on the other end have 300 jobs posted just like this on Indeed.com and LinkedIn. They need people, and they don't need to import talent. I don't need another person coming from Dallas. I don't need another person coming from New York or San Francisco, or India or China, or whatever, to get this job. This job can come from the very unemployed people who are on the system. They're SNAP recipients. They're people who are getting unemployment. They don't need to be on the system of Georgia and somebody else is coming in getting a quality job. No, the people that are on the system of Georgia that are getting the benefits of a lot of our things that prop up, these people need to be moved from survival to stability. And then on to success. So silver rights is what we're working on now, is how do we make sure people are included in the process of economic mobility. Poverty can't be a generational thing where this family and then the next family, I mean, you got people that are 5 generations of the same low income status. And so we have to break that down and overcome it. And that means all systems have to support it.
And you just discussed your tech program. One of our questions was just kind of thinking about all the organizations that you believe that are advancing opportunities for people of color. Can you talk more about your tech program and then other programs that you may recommend to other people and how they can get involved?
Yes. Sorry about that, Curtis. That must have meant that I answered the next question with my
a little bit.
A little bit. That's what happens when you get to flowing and then don't look at your paper. But so yeah, I just mentioned the technology career program, and that is, we're in our 2nd year, and I'll tell you, there's going to be a really big announcement coming out soon in about a week, right around 4th of July, about something that we're partnering with here in Atlanta with a really huge technology giant. And it's all because, one day I had an idea that low-income folks don't have to stay that way. And I'm not that bright just because I know a little bit about technology. I just got in a pipeline that once you're in that pipeline, you can kind of just stay the course if you get in that pipeline. So once I committed to myself in high school and got in that college, I was off. I was going, but everybody don't have that opportunity. So what happens with them? What happens with them? So now, any program that can say, no, we're going to disrupt the way that things are going right now. We're going to disrupt how technology companies only hire people from Georgia Tech or maybe a technology apprentice program or something. And that's just not filling the pipeline well enough. We have to disrupt that and almost hack it. We have to hack these systems and say there's another way to skin the cat. I took a whole lot of classes at Georgia Tech that I can't even remember right now, and I only use about 5 or 6 things. But luckily I went at a time where I could go on scholarship. But imagine paying $40,000 a year for 4 years to go to college, and there's no job on the other end of that, or something to that nature. Or you're spending the next 20 years trying to pay off the $160,000 worth of debt that you've accumulated to go to college. I look at it as, how can we, it's great to go to college, and I'm encouraging my daughter to go. She's 15, but there's also another way to get to these economic outcomes that we're desiring. That individual that just didn't, we always say he's so bright, but the way he does is he doesn't show up on the PSAT, or she doesn't show up on the SAT or the ACT. That shouldn't mean that they're cast to the side. Let's put them in something that they can do. Let's go back to vocations. So I like one organization that's really good is SEFCA. the Construction Education Foundation of Georgia. I think the F is foundation or something, fund or foundation, but Construction Education Foundation of Georgia. They train people on how to do construction jobs. That can be, and mostly it's commercial construction, building of these big buildings and office parks and, you know, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They helped us take a lot of people that lived in the communities near the Falcon Stadium, and they helped us train those folks on how to work on the construction of that stadium, which needed thousands of jobs. We, as a city council, I was not about to see a whole bunch of people drive up here to Atlanta and get these jobs with out-of-state license plates when we got people living 4.5 minutes from the stadium. And actually the stadium looms over their neighborhood, and they couldn't go in there and get a $15 an hour job to build that stadium. So SEFTA, and wherever you are in Georgia, there are organizations that are training people to do work. So that's one that is definitely great. I know there's some great programs in nursing that it's just missing me right now, of some that are training folks on nursing. And those are some of the, like Atlanta Area Tech and some other things like that. Those technical colleges, putting money and support behind them are really important. Another organization that I'm fond of is Partnership for Southern Equity, PSE, Partnership for Southern Equity. What Partnership for Southern Equity does is they provide a lot of policy advocacy and training for organizations, institutions, on how to provide justice in these various sectors. So they have a just energy sector, which is about economic and environmental justice, along with our, whether that's working with Georgia Power, whether that's working with your water department, whether that's working with a gas company or telecom communications company. They call it Just Energy. And they work with these organizations, and they work with the community organizations and the school systems, et cetera, to talk about whether that's pricing of your energy, whether that's how to help people with solar, or how to, improve access to broadband and those things. They have a just growth area too, which is about economics. And so they work on those things too. So PSE, Partnership for Southern Equity, is one that you can look into. They do training. They'll come down and train you. They also do advocacy work and helping your legislators and others do best practices so that fairness and equity are within our system. And then they do things related to the criminal justice system as well. So that's one. And a number of others. One other one that's really good is Operation Hope. Operation Hope is a financial literacy, more than financial literacy, but more like financial inclusion. This is by a guy named John Hope Bryant. He's been around a while. He actually talks a lot about civil rights. And we, TechBridge, we developed an app for them, and it's called Hope in Hand. And it's a mobile app that people can look at their bank account statements, look at their budgeting, look at their credit score, all in hand. And there's literature in there about how to improve this or do that. Where's the closest this or closest that? But they basically work with banks, Operation Hope. And what they talk about is how to take your neighborhood from a 500 credit score neighborhood to a 720 credit score neighborhood. And that has a lot to do with how many payday lenders you have in your neighborhood, pawn shops you have in your neighborhood, all these check cashing places. There are so many people that are unbanked. It's a shame. It's a shame that we have that many people in our state and in our neighborhoods that are unbanked. They can't get a bank because they must have had, there's either not close enough proximity to a viable bank, or something happened in the past where they had a bankruptcy, or they wrote bad checks, or they did something that at that time was an offense, and it was deemed necessary to close down their account. But now Can we get back into a bank so they don't have to pay 1%, 2% at the check cash in place? Can they have a bank so that someone can actually talk to them and address them in a meaningful way about loans and banking and credit? Once you're unbanked, putting money under the mattress is a deadly combination for you to overspend and mismanage, and also, money might disappear for this reason or that reason. So that's just a few of the people that I would share that you guys could look into.
Thank you so much. I have a question. This is Angie again. You support a $15 minimum wage. Can you explain your position on that topic and the economic implications of it?
Yeah, so in the city of Atlanta, I implemented the $15 an hour in Atlanta. The state of Georgia does not allow any municipality, any government to set the minimum wage. The state sets the minimum wage, but what we were able to do in Atlanta was set the minimum wage for any city entity. So if you work for the city of Atlanta, if you work for Invest Atlanta, which is our economic engine, if you work for the Beltline, if you work for any of the affiliated organizations of the city hall, city of Atlanta, you are guaranteed a minimum salary of $15 an hour. And how we implemented that was, at the time, that was 2015 or 16 that I started working on the legislation with I had to call in our our HR department, and I called in our finance department, and I said, how many people right now are below $15 an hour in the city? The city had roughly about 7,500 employees, and there were about 890, I think that was the number, about 890 were below $15 an hour. And we were looking at, I said, well, how much would it be to get everybody to $15 an hour? So it came up with a big number. And so I said, let's do it in tranches. So the first year was 2016. I think 2016. No, it was 20. So it was in 2016 I passed it. So 2017 we went to $13 an hour. 2017 or 2018 we went to whatever it was. It went 13, 14, 15. I feel like I'm getting old here. So 13, 14, 15. Each year it went one up so that we could manage it. It's hard to just do it like that. And I saw the budget implications. So we said each year we will roll people up. But the other thing about it is, if your boss is at $15.10 and you all of a sudden tomorrow show up at $15, your supervisor is going to come and say, hey, there's a big difference between what I do and what they do. I need to be higher too. So we also had to make sure that we looked at what we call compression. And so, supervisors, so everybody had to creep up a little bit to a certain point. So all of that had a cost to it. So you can't just snap your fingers and make everybody at $15 an hour, because you have to manage that growth and in a way that you can fund it, because we did not want to raise taxes. We did not want to cause a burden on another group to help this group. So we ended up having to be thoughtful and mindful about it. So we moved up to $15. Now, everybody's happy. They're at $15 an hour. Well, they're not going to be long. They're going to want to be at $16 an hour, 17. So you have to kind of anticipate some of those things. But in Atlanta, now we are a model employer. We have lines of people lined up to take on watershed jobs, take on public works jobs, take on parks and recs jobs, because they're making $15 an hour. They have a great healthcare plan. They have a great set of vacations and holidays. I would love for the whole city, private businesses as well, to be at $15 an hour. And even if it's not 15, let's do it in tranches. Again, we can go to 12, then 13, then 14, then 15. And, if model employers like the universities, like the hospitals, like all these major entities, if they move to $15 an hour, then there'll be a suction of top talent that would move there. And then the private, the private sector will say, me publishing this job on LinkedIn or Indeed.com for $11, I'm not getting enough hits, or the hits that I'm getting are so unqualified that I need to move this up. So I would really encourage state legislators and others to look at a minimum wage increase. And at the same time, I encourage pathways that allow people to ladders and lattices in their careers. So it's not just a goal that, hey, I'm at $15 and now that's it. No, you need to have a ladder and a lattice that takes you on up the realm so that you can be a director one day, so that you can have some professional and personal development to get the education that you need to do your boss's job. So I just think that we have a ways to go. But yes, to specifically answer your question, I do support a $15 an hour minimum wage, but I want to do it responsibly like we did it before. And if that takes some waves, we'll do it in waves. We just got to get on at least the shore so we can start getting on a wave, because we're not on the shore right now. It's just pay what you can. And that's leading to our income inequality and our gaps and our disparities that we have. And then, some people will say, well, you really want everybody working at our favorite place to go eat or our favorite place to go shop. If everybody works there and makes $15 an hour, the cost of my milk, the cost of my groceries are going to go up. And I say, yes, maybe. But at the same time, there's a whole lot of top level executive pay that is creating a whole lot of challenges for the rest of society. The top 1% is benefiting from the hard labor that these folks are doing at $10 an hour. So maybe we skim off the top a little bit, share the wealth, and flatten this ugly curve that we have, which is income inequality and poverty.
Thank you. Karen?
So when school resumes in August, what opportunities should teachers provide to help their students process the protests and understand their role to bring change?
It's my prayer, and I don't know how far this prayer is going to go because of coronavirus, but it's my prayer that the coronavirus and a vaccine and everything just works out so that those kids can walk into a building safely in August and they can get a hug from somebody that they trust. They can get a real hug from a real person that they haven't seen since March. To me, I remember my youth. I don't know. I remember my youth so well, and loving teachers, loving lunch, loving the bus, loving play, recess. Just school was fun. And those teachers that would tell you stop running in the hall would also hug you at the end of the day. I mean, our sensory nerves need some love from some people that just care about us. And that's where the school system has done a tremendous job across the nation in providing a stabilizing thing for kids. So I would love for them to be able to get on a bus, wave at a bus driver, everybody's happy, go into a school, everybody's happy, sit down, learn. And the teachers got to come back now and make sure that all that stuff that happened over, in the last 3 months where they're just checking in, doing their homework. Hopefully, there's a lot of review sessions, a lot of grace is given to these kids because parents were having to try to, homeschool while they did their work. So they're on a Zoom call and kids on a Zoom. I think that, the coming back to school, parents, is like church. There's, if you belong to a church, you know how important that is. Belonging to a PTA is going to be just as important in August and for the rest of our lives to see just how we do community better. And you know what? I don't know if everybody knows this, but you don't have to have a child to go to a PTA meeting, to join the PTA. You just have to be a concerned citizen in the community. You can be a part of the parent-teacher association. And so how to process, to go to your specific question, how to process all that has happened with the police and the movement and the protest. I think teachers have to be honest because kids have been receiving honest information over cable news networks and over the internet, and they've been receiving faulty information over those same things. So teachers have to be honest and say, what have you heard? And be a two-way street, letting people voice their concerns, making sure everybody feels heard, because teachers and school systems are going to have to display what the crowd is saying right now. Look at us as fully human. We have things to say. The things that we have been saying for decades, you have not been hearing. The things that this current generation has been saying for the last 2 or 3 years, I can't breathe, no justice, no peace. We've been dismissing that as old folks. We've been dismissing that as privileged individuals in this community. They want to be heard, and they are saying it in channels that we don't often use: Snapchat, TikTok, all these other forms of Instagram and Twitter. And you and I may be just watching our standard, news network while we cook dinner. That's not where our youth are getting their information. They are communicating. And so teachers are going to have to be very good at being inclusive in conversations, saying, I want to hear from everybody in the class, saying, that's a good idea. How do you feel about that idea? What did you think about that? How did you experience that? And here's some facts to go with it. Okay, treating kids the way the crowd is asking right now. We want to be heard. We want the halls of government to come down to our level and hear what we're saying is happening. You don't think Black kids are getting shot and tased? Now that you got a body camera, you can see that. Okay, we've been telling you this has been happening. We told you when 5 of us stand on a corner, it is a magnet for police to come see about us. And the police are heavily armed, and they're coming to find out what we're doing. And we're like, but when 5 other kids are standing on the corner, they pass by. They're communicating that loud and clear that this has been real. And so now we have to take them on their word that they have challenges that don't mirror all the time the things that we experience on our daily commute or in the communities that we live in. We don't experience those things, but they do. Some of them do. And so we have to allow them the space, the time, the grace, the patience to explore their feelings, to share with us their solutions. Even when their solutions, I've tried to get some solutions out of kids, and they're all over the place, but I have to be patient enough to wait it through and navigate through all of that and give them space to, I even think that the role of student government has to change from just planning, the fall dance and the spring dance and homecoming. The role of student governments, particularly in high school, has to change to, advocacy and explaining back to the administration of the school systems about what this body, what this Benjamin Mays High School, or what this Thurl High School is experiencing in the communities that they live in, so that they have a mechanism to not only plan their party or plan their homecoming or their what have you, but for them to also say, this is what we experience, and we're laying this to the adults and say, hey, here's what we have. Here's what our set of questions are. Here's what our set of solutions are. Sitting in rows, looking at a chalkboard for 8 hours is already, we've talked about how that's not, optimum learning environment anymore. We have to now make sure that we have communal learning and communal opportunities for them to learn and to give, to express what they're learning in a communicative fashion.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. This is Chris Cannon from the Georgia Council. There's a lot of activity going on in my private chat over here. We have a lot of econ teachers, so you're just hitting on a lot of nerves. The next part of this was I was going to ask some questions out of the chat box, but you have a constituent who has a great question, so I want him to ask it rather than me put in my own words. So I'm going to turn to Andrew Holbrook.
Hey, good morning. As Chris said, I live in the city. I live in the West End neighborhood of Atlanta. I teach in Gwinnett, but I live in West End. So my question is,
have we sent emails to each other before?
I have not, but
Okay.
I was in another conference call with you a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So you may have
Yeah.
seen me pop up in that gallery or something, but yeah.
It's the cool bear
You recognize the way up behind
in
me.
Atlanta. Yeah.
Yeah. So this summer I started the process to get my specialist degree in educational leadership and policy. So I'm starting to think of, from a leadership perspective, do you have any recommendations or even examples of maybe principals or school leaders within APS, how they combat, or how we could combat the inequities that we have kind of been talking about? Because as a lot of us know, waiting on legislation or even policy change could take longer than we have time for. So what are some things that school leaders on the local level can start to do maybe in the fall?
Yeah, one thing that I've seen that's a very good practice is community liaison positions in each school, and not having that person be someone that's a not having them be a really junior person. They need to be somewhere in the middle to upper level of respect in the career path. They can have a junior associate that works with them, but at Young Middle School here in Atlanta, named after Andrew Young's late wife, which is actually the school I went to in middle school, we have a community liaison person, and I think the title is something bigger than community liaison, but for the most part, it's an outreach person. And their job is to bring resources from the community to the school. And that means inviting the business community for brunches, lunches, breakfasts, and say, hey, we have this room here that we want to reimagine a space for kids. This is going to be a spa type place for kids to come chill out in, or this is an after school place for kids. So asking the community for help. I don't think that school systems have enough funding to do everything. I also don't think that school systems should overburden the teacher to now play community liaison as well as an official role. I think they have so much work they have to do in the classroom that trying to say Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones that's been teaching kids all day, focusing on that, now has to be the person that asks Chick-fil-A or asks to help build out this community garden. No, that's hard enough. I mean, they can be brought in on a phone call. They could be brought in, in a classroom to say, hey, what are your thoughts? But not that their daily job is to go out there. Each school needs a person that brings the community in. And it says, this month we're doing, homecoming. We don't just want this to be a homecoming for the kids. This is a homecoming for the businesses around here, the churches around here. All these people individually care about the kids. They just don't have access to the kids in a way that leads to the outcomes that we all agree that we want. So many schools are surrounded by churches and surrounded by businesses that all are saying, we wish those kids well this year. We hope those kids have what they need. And just going to them saying, give us backpacks is like it's such the smallest shortcut to delivery. But no, we have, we need mentors. We need big brothers, big sisters. We need career coaches. It shouldn't be pulling teeth to find somebody for career day. And we need to do multiple career days. So I think that, I know I'm harping on the fact that the community liaison, but the community has the resources. The community has more resources than just the school has. The schools budgets are really hamstrung, right? They don't want principals walking around with a purchasing card and just spending money frivolously. Correct, as we should not. We've seen how bad that goes sometimes. But the person that owns the dry cleaners, and the person that owns that's over the church, and the person that's at the YMCA, all those people care about these kids, and they do have spending accounts. They do have access to t-shirt printing and other things. So I just think that a community liaison is almost a must-have for each school. And the reason why I say it can't be too junior of a person, it has to be someone who can look at a business owner in the eye and say, your commitment today was not good enough for the value you get out of this community. You can't be in this community with selling this much food, selling this much supplies to these parents each and every day to get their food from you, each and every day to get their services met from you, and you giving us a $200 donation just doesn't fit the magnitude of the need that we have, nor does it fit the picture that I see each day when we roll up here and spend $50 on dry cleaning, or we spend $50 on Chinese food at your restaurant. No, I know my family has contributed to you. You have to contribute back to this school in a meaningful way. And we're going to put a real program in place with real advertising mechanisms, with real outcomes and measurables that say, look at what you've done to help us and look at what we've done to help you. I think that it needs to have a middle to upper person. So I don't know how y'all are going to pull that off, but go forth and prosper at all the schools across Georgia to get you somebody that can do that. And maybe it might be a multiple, maybe it's one person for each cluster. The middle, high, and elementary has one liaison that does it for all three. So I don't know, but I think that's my first one, Andrew, and I'll think of others.
Thank you, Andrew. Great question and great answer, Councilman Dickens. I've got one final question. We've got but 3 minutes left on our time here.
Okay.
My question to you is this: what makes you most proud to be an Atlantan?
Oh, wow. So I love this city so much. I love the state of Georgia. I love this city. I grew up in a city that, Maynard Holbrook Jackson, the mayor of Atlanta, that basically, expanded the opportunities for minorities to be a part of the airport, to be a part of the city government, banking, et cetera. I was born 6 months after he took office. And so he created Camp Best Friends for me to be able to have an after school program and a summer program. And then from there, we had the Olympics. And from there, I've driven on streets in my city named after Martin Luther King. I've had streets in my city named after Benjamin Elijah Mays, Dr. Benjamin Mays, who was the dean at Morehouse, who Dr. King looked up to. That's the school that I went to. I've driven on roads named after Joseph Lowry or Andrew Young, or so all throughout Atlanta, I'm confronted and comforted by history. And the Atlanta University system. And so and then we're a metropolitan international city that tries to get it right each and every day. These big buildings downtown are filled with individuals from all different walks of life. And I see us trying. I see us as a city that is trying to overcome racial injustice, trying to overcome some of our, issues related to classism, the haves and have-nots. I see us trying to, be a beacon of hope for the whole Southeast. Atlanta's a place to go for refuge for a lot of people. When I run into people that are experiencing homelessness, I talk to them and I say, well, you're asking me for money. Let me let you know who I am. Here's money. City Councilman, how'd you get here? I want to help you. They're coming from Rome, Georgia. They're coming from Chattanooga. They're coming from all different places. And they're coming to the central business district of the central city of the Southeast because they feel and they've heard that there's an opportunity here for them to get the support they need, for them to get the help they need. These folks aren't all homegrown APS, people that didn't make it out. A lot of these folks are people who see Atlanta as a shining light on the hill, and there's an opportunity and a heartbeat there that cares about them. And so I love my city, and we try to do all we can to be accommodating to those visitors, as well as all the other visitors that come here for Peach Bowl, for SEC Championship, for all the conventions that we serve, so Atlanta tries to get it right each and every day. And occasionally we get it wrong. Occasionally an officer missteps. Occasionally someone does something or says something they shouldn't say. And we have to pick it up and fix it. And hopefully we're doing that right now in the hardest situation to do it in, which is police brutality and coronavirus, all voter suppression and everything else that's going on at the same time. But we're going to get through this.
Councilman Dickens, we cannot thank you enough. This has been a great 60 minutes.
Yes.
I want to thank all the teachers that joined us to ask questions and all the teachers that participated in this. Teachers, please visit gce.org/workshops to register for our upcoming civil rights workshops for 5th, 8th, and high school teachers. Thanks again, and we wish you the best of luck, Councilman Dickens, and thank you for doing all you're doing for Atlanta. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thank you all. And
Thank
take
you.
care of our kids next year.
Thank you.